one thing we noticed, and I'm not a snob, you know what I mean? I'm quite happy for people to kind of do what they want to do, right? But obviously, as I said, we were down in Blackpool, and we're down at that Haven Holiday Park, and the place reeked of weed. And I was thinking,
Didn't
it? It's only families here. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if, I can't imagine there'd be that very many young families visiting, young couples visiting. So it's all people with their kids. So they're also just fucking rocking about, with their kids. Which is pretty mad. Pretty mad, like.
It's like Trailer Park Boys.
well, aye.
Aye, the UK equivalent of Trailer Park Boys, but like a holiday camp.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's just that weird juxtaposition of like, terrible. I can't even remember what is it. Is it a Class A drug now, or is it still Class C? I can't remember.
I don't know.
It's a drug. It's an illegal drug, and you're smelling it everywhere. And then, so you've got that, and then as I said, you've got this illegal activity, I suppose, and then we're in the leisure building, the show bar, and there's people running about like. Dancing about in big, like, costumes. You know what I mean? Like, dressed as big, cuddly bears and monkeys. Yeah, children characters. And it's just, like, so bizarre. So bizarre. Spotted quite a few Scottish people on holiday looking for a bottle of tonic in the kind of co-op that was there. I think it was the first, or it must have been the second night we were in one of the wee restaurants. Like I said, it was like a wee bit like Wetherspoons. And there was a couple of guys, because the restaurant kind of looked out onto the pool that they had there. And there was a couple of Scottish guys being like, "What the fuck? Why is the pool open? Get the wains in there and we can get pissed." And I was like, fuck it. Rowan and Imogen just fucking eating their dinner at the time. Anyways.
Sounds like the end of days of Sodom and Gomorrah or some shit.
That is Blackpool for you.
Yeah, it's Blackpool.
That's Blackpool. It's Blackpool town.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. They tried and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Let's actually get started.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Scratchcast, the alternative music podcast. I'm Sneds, and as always, I'm joined by the man of the people, Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
And we're just two Scottish students who love to talk about music and Blackpool, apparently. How have you been, Granny boy?
Yeah, I've been good. What about yourself?
Yeah, I've been doing all right. I was a little bit concerned that Keanu Reeves appears to have gone missing.
Right. Okay.
The mainstream news haven't reported it because they don't want to cause like mass panic. But there's wanted posters.
They're just trying to keep it low key.
Yeah. There's wanted posters going up everywhere. I don't know about you, but I've been searching for Keanu, and I just don't know what to do. What I'm hoping is that if we go through his entire filmography and confirm, and
that'll jog people's minds.
Yeah, if we go through a list of his films and confirm if we've seen them and what we'd rate them, then it might kind of just like inflate his ego and bring him back to the people.
Yeah.
In all his cardboard surfer boy glory. So what I'm going to do, this will take 5 minutes. I'll bring up his Wikipedia filmography and we'll just go through these really quickly. I think I dare say between us we'll have seen about 50% of these at the most. So anyway, One Step Away from 1985. You heard of that? Seen that?
I have not seen that. Have you seen it?
No, I have not seen that. What about, there's 3 films from 1986. Young Blood, Flying, and River's Edge. Have you seen any of them?
Young Blood sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you the storyline.
No,
or whether I've seen it for that matter.
See, I don't think I've seen that either. Nor have I seen either of the other 2.
You were born in 86.
I was born in 86, so I don't know. I don't know if any of those films would be appropriate for babies, but
a young snetted.
I don't think I've seen any of them.
Snedling.
Snedling, yes. Right, there's none. He had no films in 1987, so he was upstaged by you,
By me?
being born. 1988, 4 films here. The Night Before, Permanent Record, The Prince of Pennsylvania, and Dangerous Liaisons.
I think I might have seen Dangerous Liaisons. Or bits of it.
Yeah, Dangerous Liaisons is the only one I've actually heard of, but I don't think I've ever watched it, so I can't rate it. Let's keep going. 2 films in 1989, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Parenthood.
Yeah, so I remember Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, as much as I remember watching it, I remember liking it, but I really have kind of vague memories of it, like almost just like wee snapshots of the characters that are in it. They meet Napoleon, don't they? They meet the Grim Reaper. I remember that being a character.
If that, see, there's 2 of them. We'll come to the other one later, and they kind of both merge into one for me.
Yeah.
I think the Excellent Adventure is the one where they travel through time and meet all the different people from history, including Napoleon and various others. And do they also meet that weird alien? Or is that in the other film?
See, I can't remember the alien.
No, it's maybe.
What did the alien look like?
I don't know. I don't know how to do.
How to describe him?
I can't really picture it properly, but I mean, I remember it being good. Like,
yeah, I remember enjoying it.
Like, I don't know. I'm gonna say it'll be like watching it now. It'll be a 7 out of 10. I'm gonna say, I guess. And then Parenthood. I don't know. I don't think I've seen that. 2 films in 1990. I Love You to Death and Tune In Tomorrow. Seen either of them?
Nope.
1991, Point Break, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and My Own Private Idaho. So yeah, I've seen Point Break and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Point Break's pretty good.
Yeah, Point Break's great. Yeah, that's a great film. My Private Idaho, is that with the River Phoenix?
I don't know. All I've got is that. Well, let me click on it.
I think it might be. That could have been.
Yeah.
That's the film I'm thinking of. Yeah, I think that's maybe River Phoenix's last film.
Maybe from the director of Drugstore Cowboy. This means nothing to me.
Yeah, that's a really good film.
My Private Idaho.
Yeah,
I've not seen it. So you've seen all 3 of them then? 1991. Okay. 1992, Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's a really
brilliant
good film. Yeah, brilliant film.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, Gary Oldman.
Anthony Hopkins.
Is it?
Is he Van Helsing?
Oh, yeah, I think he is actually. Yes.
Yeah, that's a
Anthony
strong
Hopkins,
film, man. Winona Ryder.
Richard E. Grant.
I've forgotten. Does he play? Who does he? Is Tom Waits in that?
Yeah, Tom Waits is like a weird, like
he plays
dungeon guy. That he is.
Oh, it's not Reginald. I can't remember. It's like Dracula's kind of slave, isn't it? And eats all the bugs. Yeah,
something like that. So that's a pretty good film. As far as I remember, Keanu Reeves is a bit like he does a really terrible British accent. But other than that, he's alright. 1993, Much Ado About Nothing. Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, Freaked, and Little Buddha. I don't think I've seen any of them.
I haven't seen any of them. Little to Do About Nothing, that's a Jane Austen thing, isn't it?
It's a Shakespeare play, isn't it? Much Ado
is it Shakespeare?
Yeah. One of the comedies. One of the comedies, I think, but I haven't read it, I haven't seen it. 1994 is a big one. Speed. I remember that being amazing. You ever see Speed 2?
Is Speed 2 the bus?
Speed 1's the bus. Boat? Speed 2's like a
boat. It's a big
cruise liner. Yeah,
cruise liner. Yeah, I've seen both of them.
Yeah, the second one's alright, but the first one's the best one. Right, definitely. 1995, Johnny Mnemonic and A Walk in the Clouds.
No.
Johnny Mnemonic is where he's like...
it's a little robot or something, isn't it?
No, that's Johnny number 5. It's Short Circuit. Johnny Mnemonic is where Keanu Reeves is like he smuggles like data in his brain or something. Like they download information in his brain and he smuggles it. It's all right. I've seen it like once. I don't know if it holds up, but I remember enjoying it, like a weird sci-fi. I don't know. A Walk in the Clouds. I've not heard of that. Chain Reaction in 1996. Chain Reaction and Feeling Minnesota. Chain Reaction, I vaguely remember. There's a scene where Keanu Reeves and his co-star are like driving on a moped, like with a nuclear explosion happening behind them. That being quite a good thriller, but again, looking back, it's probably shit. But Feeling Minnesota, I don't know what that is. Fucking hell, right. We need to fly through these. This maybe wasn't the best idea. 1997, the last time I committed suicide, The Devil's Advocate.
No, I've heard The Devil's Advocate's really good, but I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really
Michael
good.
Douglas, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good. I've never seen it. I don't know about that other one, The Last Time I Committed Suicide. I've never heard of that. 1999, The Matrix, big one, and a film called Me and Will, where he plays himself, apparently, but I've never heard of that. The Matrix is like, well, it's just The Matrix, isn't it? It's iconic.
Kind of cultural phenomenon, isn't it?
Exactly. 2000, The Replacements, The Watcher, and The Gift. Again, haven't seen any of them. 2001, Sweet November, Hardball. Haven't seen either of them. 2003, The Matrix Reloaded, The Animatrix, The Matrix Revolutions, and Something's Gotta Give. The Matrix Reloaded's not that good. It's pretty dumb, actually.
I don't know if he's going to be coming back, Sneds. I don't think we've massaged his ego enough to bring him back.
We're only at 2001. There's plenty of time. Sorry,
That's
2003.
true.
Yeah, The Matrix Reloaded is mostly, it's like a 5 out of 10 or something. Half of it's good, half of it's shit. The Animatrix, I remember bits of that being alright. I don't know. The Matrix Revolutions? Is that the right year?
I think you'd be surprised, mate. You'd be surprised.
Is that the third Matrix film, The Matrix Revolutions?
I think so.
That didn't come out
Surely
the
it
same
didn't come
year.
out the same year.
That's got to be a mistake. But that film's like dog shite. the third Matrix film is absolute dog shit. Anyway, 2005, Constantine. That's a decent movie.
That's a good film, man.
Yeah, decent
Good film.
movie. Thumbsucker and Ellie Parker. I don't know those ones. 2006, A Scanner Darkly. Never seen it all the way through, but it's got that really cool art style. So
Yeah.
the sort of painted graphics over the top of people's real faces or however they did it. The Lake House, The Great Warming. One of those is a documentary, apparently. 2008, Street Kings. The Day the Earth Stood Still. I've seen the old, 50s version of that film, or maybe whenever that came out, but I haven't seen the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still. 2009, The Private Lives of Pippa Lee. Never heard of it. 2010, Henry's Crime. Never heard of it.
No?
2012, Side by Side, Generation Never heard of them.
No?
2013, Man of Tai Chi. And 47 Ronin. I've heard of 47
That
Ronin.
sounds familiar. But
I haven't seen that. 2014, John Wick. Have you seen John Wick?
No, I haven't, but I've heard they're amazing. They're proper, boys' films. Just senseless, gratuitous violence and action. So I've heard.
Yeah. I think I started to watch the first John Wick and I wasn't in that frame of mind, so I was just like, I can't be arsed with this, and turned it off, and then I went back to it. But I have heard they're good, just pointless action films, kind of.
We started watching the Bob Odenkirk movie
Oh yeah,
called
okay.
Nobody. Have you seen that?
I've not, but I've seen the trailer, I think.
Yeah, we started watching it, and I kind of get the impression that it's of a kind of similar vibe to the kind of John Wick movies, and
Yeah.
I was kind of getting into it, but Kerry was having none of it, and it was just off. It was so I want to get back to watching that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine him as an action hero, but maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2015, Knock Knock, Deep Web, The Untold Story of Bitcoin and the Silk Road. Mifune, The Last Samurai.
Nope.
Nope. 2016, Exposed, Keanu, The Neon Demon, The Bad Batch, The Whole Truth.
Now, Neon Demon is I've mentioned Neon Demon quite a few times in the podcast because the soundtrack is immense. Really, really good. Really good. A really quite bizarre film. It's about the fashion industry and kind of the models in the fashion industry. Yeah, and it goes a bit left field in the kind of second part of the movie, but yeah, I really liked it. Like kind of going into kind of like satanic kind of ritual and stuff like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Okay. I know, I've never even heard of it. Well, I mean, if you've mentioned it before, then I've obviously been listening. Should watch it though. 2017, To the Bone, John Wick Chapter 2, A Hardening of Monumental Proportions in SPF 18. Nope. 2018, Siberia, Destination Wedding and Replicas. Nope. 2019, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, Always Be My Maybe. Toy Story 4, Already Gone.
I've seen that.
You've seen Toy Story 4?
I've seen Toy Story 4, yeah. I couldn't tell you who he plays, though.
He plays Duke Kaboom.
Oh, fuck, yeah. Yeah, that's quite cool, actually, yeah.
I haven't seen Toy Story 4. I think
You're missing out.
Seen...
You're missing out.
I think I've seen the second one, but only bits of it. Anyway, the other two are Already Gone and Between Two Ferns, the movie. I don't know what that is. 2020, the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. I've seen a SpongeBob movie, but not that one. Bill and Ted Face the Music, the latest Bill and Ted. Have you seen that?
No, I didn't even realise there was one.
I knew it was out, but
you did.
I did know it was out, but I didn't make an effort to watch it. 2021, The Matrix Resurrections. I have seen this, the latest Matrix film.
Was it dog shit?
It was okay, actually. It was really meta in that, well, I mean, The Matrix is pretty meta anyway, but it was really weird. It was almost like The Matrix wasn't real. Like, what happened in the first, in the first three films didn't really happen, or something like that. It's all very strange. It's not as you'd expect. So it was quite good. Compared to those two sequels, it's far better.
So does it mess with the timeline slightly? Is it?
It messes with whether Neo was ever the one, ever came out of the Matrix or was ever the one or anything like that.
Oh right, okay.
I can't remember exactly what it was about, but yeah, it's quite different. So it was okay. 2022, DC League of Super Pets. Nope. 2023, John Wick Chapter 4. Nope. 2024, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Well, that's not out yet, I don't think. So these are ones that are to be announced. So, I mean, you'll have to return.
You'll have to. If Sonic is ever to go ahead.
I mean, you'll have marketing commitments that he has to attend.
Exactly.
Anyway. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. 2025, John Wick presents Ballerina. I feel like the John Wick films are going completely off the deep end. He just gives up fighting.
John Wick presents DIY. Yeah, John Wick. I'm retarmacking my drive.
Aye. John Wick presents Antiques Roadshow. And then there's two to be announced films, Good Fortune and Outcome. So.
Okay. So we must have seen less than 50%.
I've only seen about.
That's quite.
I've seen about 5 films on that list, I think.
That's quite nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's quite nuts.
And then there's a whole list of TV shows as well that I won't go through, and video games. So he's been in a shit ton of stuff. And without having, I've seen 5 out of however many revealed off there. I can't really comment on whether his filmography is good or bad, really, because
I mean, out of those 5 films, you called one of them dog shit.
I mean, that third Matrix film is one of the worst films I've ever seen, alongside the third X-Men film
Do you know what is the worst film ever made?
Do I know?
It's a fact.
In your opinion? Oh no, it's in a fact.
No,
Okay.
it's fact. It's fact. And kind of maybe my opinion. Miami Vice. Fucking hell, man.
Oh, that's a
That was
terrible,
awful movie. Jesus Christ. There was a film with Robert Pattinson. I can't even remember the name of it, but like I'm pretty sure we walked out like maybe kind of half an hour into it. It was just like, my God. Like pulling teeth.
Yeah, Miami Vice with Colin Farrell.
Jesus.
And
Yeah, well, I think so. It was like, I mean, must have been early noughties. Yeah, so it must be like the latest Miami Vice movie that they've made, but that was terrible.
it's one of the longest films. Like, whether it's actually that long or not, it just feels like it's about 6 hours.
Feels like it.
Yeah. I
The
would agree with
Village,
that.
actually. The Village by M. Night Shyamalan. That's an awful movie as well.
I've never watched the whole of it. I've seen bits of it, but it's like a monster movie, but it's like a cult. Like they're actually
It's
a
a
cult
cult,
or
and
something,
then
isn't it?
They turn things on its head, and you find out there's that, because you think it's set in kind of early kind of Pilgrim settler America, but it's actually kind of set in the modern day. I was on a date at the time, like we were still at school, and I was on a date, and I kept going to the toilet just to waste time. She must have been wondering what the fuck I was doing in there, but oh my God, it was terrible. Even that, like, even obviously M. Night Shyamalan is kind of renowned for having those kind of twists and surprise endings and stuff.
Yeah.
Even that wasn't enough to save the film. And I'm pretty sure it had some pretty good actors in it. Had Joaquin Phoenix. I'm pretty sure he was in it. And it's almost became a pretty good rule of thumb that if he's in a film, chances are it's probably going to be a pretty good film.
Yeah.
Even
yeah,
he wasn't
most of the
enough to save it.
I mean, if Keanu Reeves had been in it, then
Well, it could have been very different.
maybe it could have been saved. So, well, Keanu
Come
hasn't
back.
appeared. He hasn't appeared. I mean, I thought he would just like dial into the call or something.
Yeah, if nothing
So, you know.
else, to defend the Matrix films.
So he hasn't appeared. So that was a complete waste of time. Anyway, so keep an eye out for the poster and scan the QR code on there and join in on the search for Keanu. He'll show up. Like I said, he's got marketing commitments.
So now I'm looking for Keanu. I just don't know what I should do. So now I'm looking for Keanu. I just don't know what I can do. Please help me find
Okay, let's get back on track. What have we got
Let's jump in.
on this episode? On our single swap, we're discussing 10 Mile Smile by Elgin solo artist Jay Taulier and Stand Up or Sit Down by Glasgow's The Kidney Flowers. We'll talk about some gigs we've been to recently, and last but not least, we've got reviews of the following albums: Boombap for Boomers from alt-rock, hip-hop, fusion-ista, Lewca, The Heartist, a visual album from Irish musician Galvo, Wide Willow from Utrecht rockers Kaspar Baum, and Take It or Leave It from Derry pop punks CHERYM. So, let's just go into the single swap then, and as always, on every episode, we each give the other a song to listen to for discussion on next podcast. On the last episode, I gave Grant the song 10 Mile Smile by Jay Taulier, and Grant gave me Stand Up or Sit Down by The Kidney Flowers. You want to kick us off with 10 Mile Smile then, Grant?
Absolutely. So this was released at the kind of tail end of last year on the 29th of December 2023 on 4 Tom Productions. It's 2 minutes and 53 seconds long, so just under kind of 3 minutes, and it kind of feels as if it's over in a blink of an eye. The title kind of sounded really familiar to me, and I couldn't quite tell whether it was a kind of turn of phrase or if I kind of knew it from a song title somewhere. But I think you kind of told me in the last podcast that we did that it was a cover. And as it turns out, it was a cover of a song of the same title from a 2012 movie called Spike Island, which is about five pals trying to gain entry into the now Stone Roses iconic 1990 Spike Island gig. The song itself is played by the actors in the film, but was actually written by Tim Wheeler from Ash, Chad Peck from Kestrel's best mate. Obviously, we've kind of interviewed Chad Peck previously on the podcast, and a composer by the name of Ian Eshkewary. I've probably totally butchered his name there, but he's got some serious film and kind of musical credentials, having worked on the likes of Layer Cake and with the likes of David Gilmour from Pink Floyd fame, Coldplay, Annie Lennox, and Katie Tunstall. And I think he's also worked with like I could Take That and stuff like that as well, if you kind of look into him. The song itself kind of perfectly encapsulates the feeling and the vibe of the time, to the point where you could be forgiven for thinking it's a kind of straight up Stone Roses or In Spiral Carpets cover. Jay Taulier's rendition is pretty much a straightforward cover of the song from the film. That's not a criticism by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's kind of done it really well, and I think it's kind of brilliantly executed. The song feels immediately warm, bright and uplifting. The guitar riff feels very reminiscent of the Stones and kind of channels some serious John Squire-esque vibes. The vocals kick in fairly early on the track. I think it's maybe about the kind of 30-second mark. They're bold, confident. I think the pre-chorus leading into the main chorus section where the vocals kind of layer up a wee bit. It's just a delight to listen to and lifts the song to a whole new level. It's a delight, a total delight to listen to. And kind of those warm, kind of glowing moments in the song feel reminiscent of the Stone Roses song I Am the Resurrection, which is kind of one of my favourite Stone Roses tracks. So this was kind of right up my street. The only criticism that I have of this song is that it's over too soon. It just kind of burns out really, really quickly, and that's it. You know what I mean? You can never have too much of a good thing. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. You know, I was kind of reading an article in the Northern Scot, and by the sounds of things, it had done really quite well previously, reaching number 3 in the iTunes rock charts. Totally well deserved. Like, I absolutely loved it. And it is worthwhile saying as well that we maybe kind of mentioned this in the last podcast, but Jay Taulier is part of the Elgin-based indie rock quartet, the Acrylics. Their debut EP, Senseless Acts, came out on the 3rd of November, again, last year, and it's really worth a listen. It sounds like it wouldn't be all out of place in that kind of indie landscape of the kind of noughties and 2010s. It's kind of got smacks of The View, The Libertines, The Rifles, The Enemy, and perhaps more modern bands like Catfish and the Bottlemen, maybe. The opening track, Riley, I Wanna, is really good. Also, I think it's a 4-track EP. It's the last track on there, Take My Number, is a really good track as well. So yeah, I absolutely loved this, man. And I think in terms of a single, it hits every point. So it was a strong 10 out of 10 for me.
Oofed. So I've said that as far as cover versions go, it's a 10 out of 10. So in which I mean that it's, you know, it is a 10 out of 10 cover of a song. I've given an 8 out of 10 as far, you know, as a song, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But as a cover version, I think it's a 10 out of 10. And just because it, you know, like you said, it sounds just like an indie rock song from the 90s. You know, sounds like Stone Roses, sounds a bit like Oasis, wouldn't sound out of place in a playlist of similar artists from that era. And this is a really great version of the song. And Jay Taulier does well to kind of maintain that sort of nostalgic sound, which makes sense. I mean, I read that same Northern Scot article where he talks about Spike Island being his favourite film and Stone Roses and Oasis being among his favourite bands. So it kind of makes sense that he knows that sound inside out. You know, credit where credit's due. It made it to number 3 in iTunes rock chart as well, so pretty successful song. Have you seen Spike Island?
No, I was just ready to say that. I've never seen it. I've heard it's really good. It's got a few kind of familiar faces in it. It's got the young guy, I can't remember his name now, that was in Shameless. remember, I think it used to be on Channel 4 years ago. But I watched the video, I watched the video of the kind of track, 10 Mile Smile, and everybody in the YouTube comments were saying, like, I wish they'd release this as a kind of single, and now it's available for folk to listen to. So yeah, I think there'll be a lot of happy people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I haven't seen Spike Island either. I never knew it existed before this. And when you said that it was from the film Spike Island, I was like, is that like a fucking King Kong movie or something? But I think I was thinking of like Skull Island or something like that. So I was a bit confused. But yeah, it sounds like it's a sort of cool, like, music orientated road movie kind of thing. So it'd be quite decent. And like you say, the Acrylics, their EP, yeah, I like that song, Riley I Wanna, as well. I said it was a bit like Arctic Monkeys and Libertines. And I like the third song, Walk Away, which is a bit of a belter. I'm less keen on the other two songs, which are a bit slower.
It's West Beach and then the one that I've mentioned, isn't it?
Yeah.
Take My Number.
So yeah, I mean, this was a panic pick for me because I had completely forgotten to actually write a single down for you. So luckily my niece had recommended, Jay's one of her pals, so she'd recommended this to me. So,
oh, right, okay, cool.
You know, Elgin's a pretty small place. So yeah, I think I was turned out to be quite a good pick in the end. So
it definitely was a good pick one.
Yeah, awesome. So that was 10 Mile Smile by Jay Taulier. Okay, so the song you gave me is Stand Up or Sit Down by the Kidney Flowers. It came out middle of September last year on Never Found Records. It's roughly 2 minutes long. And the Kidney Flowers are a band from Glasgow. And Stand Up or Sit Down is the fourth and final single released ahead of their second album, Burn Your Furniture, which came out about a week after the single did. And it's the fifth song from that album. On that album, sequentially. Mm-hmm. Before listening to a single note of their music, I checked out their Facebook page, and according to the description, they're a group of musically primitive fast food enthusiasts. So, admittedly, this description's a bit vague, but it does suggest they play some sort of DIY garage rock and or punk, but with a bit of a cheeky wink. And on first listen, Stand Up or Sit Down is pretty much exactly that. The guitar riffs are nice and scuzzy, the bass is a satisfying grunt, and there's a catchy stomp to the drums. It's got proper rock and roll swagger to it as well. It reminds me of stuff like Jets, Are You Gonna Be My Girl? Or the Fratelli's Chelsea Dagger. Just, it's straying into that kind of banger territory. Perhaps not as like, heavily produced as those songs, but definitely reminds me of those. The vocals are sort of shouty post-punk, and the lyrics are class. And because there's only 3 or 4 different lines in the whole song, it's pretty easy to join in with. There's the opening salvo of "Say that you love it, but it smells like you hate it. It fits you like a fucking shoe," followed by the GAN vocal shout of "Stand Up or Sit Down." It's a great moment. And then there's lyrics that are "Wearing a milkshake, you'll be wearing a milkshake," which is such a ridiculous threat, and it reminded me a lot of Post-Punk Experiment number 3 by the Wife Guys of Reddit that we talked about last time. And then the final moment of the song is my favourite part, where they just shout the word arsehole, which is gotta be one of the best endings to a song ever. I think just being at a gig and just shouting arsehole at the end of a song would be pretty amazing. It's pretty much just a straightforward rocking good time. It's punchy, it's rowdy, get a room bouncing, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Doesn't reinvent the wheel, but I can't really fault it, so I've given it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'd originally wanted to give you Mutiny. I think that must have been the third single released from the album. But by the time of the recording, Stand Up or Sit Down was the newest single, so that's what I kind of plumped for. But have you had a chance to listen to the album itself?
No, not properly. What I did do is just kind of skip through some of the tracks just to get the gist of what it sounds like, and it sounds like it'd be pretty good. Like
It's
quite
fun.
similar to this, and just it does sound like pretty decent.
It's kind of more of the same, but it's absolutely fantastic. I immediately fell in love with Mutiny. Similar to this song and similar to how you've kind of described it. And in my notes here, I've kind of described it as almost having a bit. This song in particular, actually, Stand Up or Sit Down, almost has a kind of like scuzzy psychobilly swing and swagger to it. It just feels really, as you said, really raw and raucous, and there's smacks of that throughout the album. Mutiny in particular, and I hope you don't think less of me for this, but it actually reminded me of a song from it's an old Russell Crowe movie called Romper Stomper.
Right?
Do you remember that?
It rings a bell, but I don't.
So it's about
What's
neo-Nazis, it's about
okay.
neo-Nazis and skinheads. And obviously the kind of soundtrack has some pretty kind of choice songs on there and choice lyrical content. It's not a pro racist movie, but there's one song on there called Skinhead, and Mutiny is like almost like it's very, very similar in vibe. And okay, Skinhead song is obviously a terrible fascist song, but it's definitely got that same kind of vibe to it, and it's just got this real bark to it, like bark in the vocals that I really, really enjoyed. And I'd love to see them live. I think if you kind of look at the description online, I think they've kind of been touted as kind of one of the best kind of live acts in the kind of Scottish music scene at the moment. And luckily, on a Facebook post from the 25th of March, so just towards the end of last month, they stated that their new album is 75% finished and that they were returning to the studio this month, so they'll be in the studio now. They're going to be doing a few small tours in May and June, including a trip to Bradford to play at the Neon Zebra Festival and a headline show in Manchester's the Talleyrand, and hope to do some gigs up in Scotland and England too, so I very much think that we should get ourselves down there, wherever they're playing, to see them. They've also said that Grant is still bald. Coincidentally, there is a song on the album that is entitled Bald at 5. Abby is still the coolest, and Tog still smokes a lot of doobs. So all's well in the Kidney Flowers camp.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, I think I would like to try and catch them live. I'm definitely going to have a listen to the album. So yeah, that was the Kidney Flowers, Stand Up or Sit Down.
Say that you love, but it smells like you hate. It fits you like a fucking shoe. Stand up and sit down. Wearing a milkshake. You will be wearing a milkshake.
Okay, what have you got for me for the next episode then?
I have got a song called The Sink by a band called Hey Nothing. They are a duo from Athens, Georgia, called Tyler and Harlow. I think they maybe have a couple of extra band members whenever they kind of play live, kind of judging from what I've seen on YouTube and what have you. The Sink was released on the 10th of April, it was quickly followed by the release of a further single called Main on the 17th, but I fell in love with The Sink first, and that's why you're getting that as opposed to Main. Both of them are really nice, proper kind of lo-fi, almost kind of like, I don't want to say mouldy peaches, but there is elements of that in there. But The Sink in particular has pretty much been on repeat ever since. They've released one previous album, which I've still to properly listened to, called We're Starting to Look Like Each Other, and that was released back in the end of last year, so October 2023 on Music Soup, Good Luck Have Fun Records.
So that's The Sink by Hey Nothing.
Yep.
I have got for you a song called Danzig with Myself by the Dandy Warhols featuring Frank Black. So
I've been reading about this, but I haven't actually listened to it yet. Yeah.
So essentially, this is the Dandy Warhols doing the Pixies, which on paper could go either way.
Yeah.
though having Frank Black on board is a distinct advantage. It's taken from the Dandy Warhol's new album Rockmaker, which also features Slash and Debbie Harry on a couple of tracks.
Okay.
When I first saw like some of these songs came out as singles, and when I first saw that, I thought the whole album's going to be like, a really big like rock star like on each track, but it's not. It's just those 3 tracks that feature. I think it's just those 3 tracks that feature, like these big acts. But
without giving too much away, is it Danzig by myself, as in Glenn Danzig, Misfits?
yes, that's how it's spelled anyway. So I won't give anything away because it's the Dandy Warhols, Bohemian Like You. I don't really know any of their stuff other than that. So you think that song, and then you think Frank Black or Black Francis or, whatever you want to call them. And then you think Danzig, you think, the Misfits, you think, what's that going to sound like?
Yeah, do you know what though? Because I'm the same. Like I don't really know that much of the Dandy Warhols. I seem to remember the release of like one other song round about the same time. As Bohemian Like You, but one of our pals, McInnes, messaged me not that long ago asking if I wanted to go see them because they were touring with the Black Angels. I can't remember where they're playing, either Glasgow or Edinburgh, towards the end of the year. And I just remember thinking that's quite weird. Like, it's a strange coupling.
Yes,
because Black Angels are a good band. Like, but it's kind of like drone rock that's quite gloomy, and that seems to be the polar opposite of Bohemian Like You. So,
which is like, a car advert song, or at least it feels like it now. Maybe not when it first came out, but now it's like, it's going to be on like a Renault advert or something. So I wouldn't be like, somebody was like, oh, you want to go see the Dandy Warhols? I'd just be like, no.
Yeah, that's kind of where we've left it. I've been like, no, think about it, man. Like, I don't mind seeing Black Angels. Like, I've seen them before in stereo, but I don't, like, it's just the money, man. Like, it's about 40, 50 quid a ticket. And I was like,
yeah, for us,
for a band that like one song. Yeah. Yeah, I might be pleasantly surprised, but we'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Pixies, man, like, I don't know if you saw, but like Paz Lemkichin, so the bassist who used to be in Zwan and Perfect Circle, so she's been booked from the band. What is it about that role in the Pixies?
Yeah, the bassist.
You just get booted from the band.
Yeah.
It's kind of makes me think that the guys, fucking love the Pixies, but yeah, you kind of think like
the rest of the band
a bit off with that, man. Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, because that's Kim Shattuck from the Muffs, who's now passed away. I think she left the band, but I think again it was personal issues. It wasn't she was unwell, therefore she couldn't, commit to being in the band anymore. I think they left out of kind of a disagreement or whatever. And then Paz Lynchian, who she has said, like, she's released a press statement saying like, yeah, this wasn't my plan. Like, I wanted to stay in the band, but seems like the guys have got other plans, want to take the band in a different direction or whatever. But she's been with them for quite some time, I think. 5 years, maybe, something like that. But it just kind of makes you think, like, what is it about those guys?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Sorry, went off topic there.
No, not at all. Interestingly, I just got a copy of Seven Fingers on vinyl, like,
nice.
Not that long ago. It looks, yeah. One of my favorite things Black Francis has ever done is that EP. Anyway, right. So what were those singles? I got stuck in a loop.
It was The Sink by Hey Nothing.
Yeah, and
Danzig by myself.
Danzig with myself, I think.
With myself, sorry.
Yeah, by the Dandy Warhols featuring Frank Black.
Danzig by myself would have been a better play on words.
Maybe. Well, let me
like the Billy Idol song.
Yes, let me check.
Dancing by myself.
Yeah, it's Danzig with myself.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. They tried and failed and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
We're already older. I discovered this the other day. I think we're already older than Robbie Burns. I think he died at the age of like 36 or something.
Oh,
Really
I was looking at a thing. I think it was a TikTok video where a guy was talking about how people our age are now look so young compared to people who were our age in like the 80s and stuff. Like,
did they use the example of like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray in Ghostbusters? Because I think they were our age then.
yeah, they
fucking terrible.
They,
But
Well-
maybe we look fucking terrible.
yeah, they used the example of some of the guys in Cheers. So like the old guys that used to sit at the end of the bar, like
Ted
they
Danson.
called Clive and Clive? Is that right?
Norm?
Norm, yeah, Norm's definitely
Norm.
Like,
Norm.
they're like 32. It's like,
What?
they're in their mid 30s, and it's like they looked like they were like 50, or at least
like
that's
when you
how I
see-
felt they looked when I remember watching Cheers.
I think if you were to watch it now, they'd still look as if they were in their 50s. It's like when you watch like old reruns of like, I don't know, is it Generation Game or Bullseye? Like the cunts on it just look like the contestants looked fucking awful, man.
Aye, well, so we're not, like I said, we might be looking at ourselves through
Slightly
those tinted
differently.
glasses,
Yeah.
kind of thinking we still look quite young, but actually we look like old fucks. But
I do have a full head of grey hair. to be fair.
I've got the kind of the wings which are kind of covered up by my headphones a wee bit, but
You should go full Polly Walnuts. wings.
definitely, it's always
It's a
that's what I'll
strong
do.
look.
Like when I start becoming a senile old cunt, I'll just become Polly Walnuts.
just cut about with like trackies on.
Exactly,
Leisure suits or whatever they're called.
sticking a Pish. I don't think he would have stunk a Pish. I think it was too vain. But
Yeah.
I think if you saw someone in Scotland dressed like that at his age, they would definitely stink a Pish and fire
Yeah.
and whiskey.
Aye.
Well, not whiskey, like
There's a
Tennant
stale alcohol
Super.
smell.
Yeah,
You'll share man's greatest thrill. They tried and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the crap de la crap.
okay, let's move on. So, I'm going to throw in a couple of gig reviews now before we move on to the albums. I've been to a couple of gigs. Have you been to any gigs, John?
So I went to the Bombay Bicycle Club gig, and remember we were kind of talking about this, and you were like, "Yeah, that'll be boring as fuck."
And was it?
But it wasn't. No, it was brilliant. But obviously, like me and McInnes have seen them quite a few times, and I would say that was probably the best. That was probably their best gig. Obviously, they were kind of touring their latest album, My Big Day, and the guys draw in like loads of kind of multicultural influences, elements of kind of world music on the likes of, you know, their kind of previous albums. So there was a lot of that in this new album. They had guest singers on the album, like Shaka Khan and stuff like that. Obviously, she wasn't there. She wasn't touring with them, but they did have I can't remember the name of the female vocalist that they had with them, but she executed those bits brilliant. And, you know, they had like a horn section up on stage, and it was massive. Like, you could just tell that they were having like a lot of fun. And yeah, it was a fantastic gig. Very well received. I think they maybe even put on an extra night
Okay.
at the Barrowlands. But yeah, I was, really, really enjoyed it, man.
I can't imagine there would be many people shouting, "Here we fucking go" in the Barrowlands to Bombay Bicycle Club, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
Do you know what though? Like, I mean, without being funny, like, I kind of get what you mean though. Like when you were saying, "No, that'll be boring as fuck," because like when you listen, like, because we covered not their latest album, but the album before that, which I
Yeah,
can't
it was a
remember
few
the name
years
of
ago
it.
now, wasn't it?
It was a few years ago now. Yeah, and like listen to I can kind of get where you're coming from. Like it's hard, you know, it's hard to get like jived up about it, but like they put on a brilliant show. Like they're a brilliant live act.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Not convinced. Not convinced.
Well, no, I think you make a good case.
A valid
But
point.
it's, I've not been to see them, so I can't really attest to that. So good. So there was a couple of gigs that I went to that I want to mention. The first being a band called Dragged Up at Summer Hall in Edinburgh, the beginning of March. So Dragged Up are a Glasgow band. This was their sort of genre defying band. And I was introduced to them when I reviewed their Hex Domestic EP for Snap Magazine. And I really liked that EP. And they were having a show. It was a double headliner with another band called Amateur Cult, and it was like a double headliner for Dragged Up's new album High on Ripple and Amateur Cult's single Eyes, I think it's called, and they had support from a guy called Sam Woodomas. So the support act, Sam Woodomas, he was sort of a DJ with a laptop. It was like kind of awkward crackling beats mixed with like break beats, really like low end electronics. It's really eccentric. He had like a leather jacket on. And he had this setup where he had like a little sparking like electronic thing on the table in front of him, and he would like put his finger to it, and the electricity would like spark against his finger, or he would do it with a microphone, and it was pretty cool. Like, it was a bit gimmicky, but it was pretty cool, especially alongside the sort of like weird electronic music he was doing. I think looking around the room, there were a few kind of puzzled expressions on people's faces, but it was pretty cool. I quite enjoyed it. It was a weird start to the gig, but like quite an enjoyable one. And then Dragged Up,
like hovering about with fire extinguishers, just
well, maybe in the back I didn't spot anyone, but yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. And then Dragged Up came on. They've got these weird sort of disaffected female vocals. There's a mixture of female vocals and male vocals. They're quite mesmerizing, hypnotic in a way. They've got this great song called Missing Person from their new album High on Ripple, which we were talking about Black Francis. There's a weird kind of Black Francis-esque intro to that song, and it's almost like a Night of the Body Snatchers kind of thing, where it's about a person who seems to have become a kind of facsimile of themselves. Really good song. And a lot of their songs are very different. They're sort of DIY, garage rock, punk, grunge, prog rock, like all that kind of stuff mixed together. And when they get locked into a groove, they really get locked into a groove. They had a song that was even quite Black Sabbath-esque. It got really heavy. At times it was really punky. Other times it's like complex alt rock. And they had a sort of mellow number towards the end. A lot of the songs from the new album. New album's really good, by the way. High on Ripple. And some tracks from Hex Domestic as well. Yeah, they were excellent. And the night ended with the band Amateur Cult, who I hadn't really heard of before that, but the frontman came out wearing sort of a weird mask with kind of things dangling down, and it was like an eye mask with like stuff dangling down from it. Colourful kind of thing. I don't know if I'm describing that all that well, but he was like, his vocals were quite loud and aggressive. He would get into the crowd and do like bizarre dancing and shouting. It was a bit proggy. It was a bit drony. Like, there was a bit of goth, like synths. There's a saxophone, which I've described as being haunted. There's a really great song called Ashes, where they brought on a guy called MC Think, for a bit of rapping. And yeah, they played their single Eyes, obviously, which is really cool. And I've just written grooves upon grooves upon grooves upon grooves. So very kind of similar to that, to Dragged Up in that respect, where they just get locked into a vibe and go with it. So yeah, that was a really good gig. And yeah, I'd recommend all three artists, to be fair. And Summer Hall's a really cool venue as well, just next to the Meadows. So yeah, that was Dragged Up and Amateur Cult with Sam Woodamus. And then the other gig I went to was, I finally got to see Creeper. So they were playing at La Belle Angel in Edinburgh on the Cowgate, and I was lucky enough to go there to review the gig for the Skinny. And their tour, I haven't written down the name of it, weirdly. But it was a sort of homecoming tour where they'd been in Europe or in America touring, and they were sort of coming to do these hometown, like small, intimate hometown gigs in the UK. And it was partly to promote their new album, Sanguivore, which is a fantastic album that I also reviewed for The Skinny. And some of the notes I took was at the gig are just written leather, swinging mics, dueling guitars, crowd literally singing every word. They played, I think they opened with Teenage Sacrifice, which is a really kind of 80s sort of punky, sort of like undead rock and roll almost kind of song from the album Sanguivore. They played some songs from Sex, Death and the Infinite Void. Cyanide was absolutely amazing. Annabelle as well was brilliant. What else did they play from that? Napalm Girls went down a treat. They played a whole bunch of stuff from Sanguivore, which is the whole vibe of Sanguivore is like over the top heavy metal mixed with the usual kind of creeper sort of horror punk kind of shtick and
aesthetic.
Yeah. And the band, they were just absolutely phenomenal. They just turned 10 years old as a band, so they just played a bit of everything from their back catalogue, like their early EPs. They played a bunch of stuff from Eternity in Your Arms, which songs I'd forgotten even existed, and they're so good. And yeah, they are a fantastic live band. Like the vocals are great, the guitars are great, just the sort of energy on the stage is great. And they played, they sort of went off for their encore and they came back and played a song called Further Than Forever, which is the opening track from Sanguivore. And it's like this, I think it's like 9 minutes long or something like that. And it's just a big bombastic kind of Meatloaf / Alice Cooper kind of style, just massive operatic rock song. And it was, absolutely brilliant. I'm glad they played that. And they closed with the song Misery from Eternity in Your Arms as well, which was a nice way to end it. So yeah, first time I've ever seen Creeper, and hopefully I get to see them a few times more in the coming years, because they were...
Where did you say that was again, Snids?
La Belle Angel. Or La Belle Angel on the Cowgate, so it's next to the Mash House.
Okay.
Like right next to the Mash House, a little bit up from Sneaky Pete's. Yeah. One of a pretty decent venue, actually. I've seen a few sort of rock and metal bands at the Bells. So yeah, that was one of the best gigs I've been to in quite a while. So there you go.
Cool, man.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. And tried and failed and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Right. Do you want to, before we move on to the albums, do you want to talk about Muddy?
Yeah, I'll briefly mention Muddy, because he's a big favourite of ours here at the Scratchcast. We've reviewed 2 of his albums previously, and they were both very well received. So he's kind of sent us quite a few things recently, and we've only really just got round to kind of listening to them. So he released a mini album called Karoshi. I think I'm pronouncing that properly. And that was just released just towards the tail end of February this year. It's Japanese for Death by Overworking. The whole album is in Japanese. However, there really isn't actually all that much vocals in the album. And the wee blurb that he kind of sent us, kind of prefacing the mini album, he said that he kind of released the album or started working on the album after he learned Japanese for kind of 1 week. He also changed his voice to a female so that it's sexy in the album, his words, not mine. And I think he's achieved that. There's really not all that, as I said, there's really not all that many kind of vocals in it. But as I said, Karoshi is meant to mean death by overworking. There's no, in the kind of blurb they sent us, there's no kind of direct translation. So they just use this one word, karoshi, and it's a big thing within Japanese culture. And the mini album contains 11 songs or themes, as he puts it, but the intention is that you're meant to kind of experience the album as a whole rather than listening to kind of one track or the other. And he's kind of described it as being a kind of antidote to overworking. So in many ways, it kind of feels like a bit of a chill out album. You know, there's a bit of kind of funk, West Coast. There's a bit of jazz in there as well. A lot of elements that we've kind of seen previously in his kind of other offerings. But this is in no way as avant-garde or as performative art house, performance arts type stuff that we've kind of seen him do previously. But it's a cool chill out album, really laid back. It's heavily textured, a lots going on from horns, pianos, electronic noises and what have you. Yeah. So yeah, if you've got a spare half an hour, definitely look into it. As I said, in kind of keeping with that idea of it being a kind of antidote to overworking and stress. The last song, which I think is the kind of longest track on the album, they're all in Japanese, by the way. So they're all in those kind of, you know, the kind of Japanese writing.
Japanese characters, yeah.
Japanese characters. So I couldn't tell you what each of them are called. But the last track is just rain noises, basically, with a little bit of kind of maybe ethereal electronics kind of permeating through it. And obviously the rain noises, as we all know, is something that's kind of often used within kind of self-help literature to kind of soothe you and kind of calm you down. So I think that's kind of well intentioned, and that's probably the reason why that's in there. But yeah, he's also released a couple other singles as well. That's kind of worth kind of listening to. They do feel a bit more like kind of filler tracks rather than some of the kind of bigger hitters from his previous albums, but they're good. It's funny kind of listening to Muddy because you always feel as if the sinister side of Muddy's never all that far away. And there is a song, let me get the name of it now, called The House That G.H. Go Goblin Built. There's kind of a lo-fi kind of drum beat. And as I said, it just kind of feels like a bit of a kind of filler track, but in the background, just you hear this kind of far off, almost kind of like horror, like Hammer House, horror-esque, like, church organs kind of playing, and that just kind of, yeah, you know where you're at.
Yeah.
As I said, it's kind of never far away. But yeah, definitely worth listening to. Crushes are good.
Nice. I mean, we wanted to talk about Muddy just because he sends us so much stuff. It's like he just seems to create so much music, so it seemed a shame to not
and it's just
new stuff.
It's just I just love it. Like I just love. He's just like, yeah, I've written a mini album. It's all in Japanese. Here you fucking go. I've changed my vocals to sound like a young Japanese schoolgirl. Deal with it, and it's good. It's good.
Yeah. He's a unique artist. Definitely.
Absolutely.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. And tried and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the crap de la crap.
Right. Let's move on to the album reviews then. So, if you're listening and have something you'd like us to hear, you can send it over to us at theheadscratcher@outlook.com or direct message us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So, we have got 4 albums for you, including Boombap for Boomers by Lewca, The Heartist by Galvo, Wide Willow by Kaspar Baum, and Take It or Leave It by CHERYM. So, let's start with Lewca then.
Do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, if you want to. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, as Sned's quite rightly said there, so we've got Boombap for Boomers by Lewca, self-released on the 15th of September last year. Contains 13 songs, approximately kind of 40 minutes and 33 seconds long, so just kind of under an hour. It's Lewca's 3rd studio album to date. He also featured heavily in the Fire Up the Sun album Standard Patter that we covered in one of our previous podcasts, and MC Burnout features in the opening intro track on the album, which coincidentally is called Fire Up the Intro.
Yeah.
And Lewca's bio, I think we kind of briefly talked about him before, but he kind of described it in the kind of late 90s and noughties. Artists like MIA, Gorillaz and the Streets created this distinctly middle-class English style of music that mixed multicultural sounds from their home with alt rock and hip hop of the day. So Lewca kind of hopes to kind of draw on the same approach and borrows freely from the 80s, new wave, 90s, alt, modern lo-fi, indie pop and hip hop. And you can definitely hear that in his music. I remember when we were speaking about him before, I can't remember where I kind of read it, but I read it kind of, I think one of his other influences included the likes of Tom Waits and The Clash as well. So interestingly, you've got that kind of Straight to Hell, MIA, Paper Planes connection there, because MIA covered or sampled Straight to Hell in her, I think, most well-known song, Paper Planes. And certainly kind of listening to his music, I got that kind of, certainly listening to this album rather, I got that kind of later day Clash vibes, or rather Mick Jones solo project, big audio kind of feel to some of it, which I kind of really liked, man. What was your kind of thoughts?
Yeah, so you mentioned Lewca was on that Fire Up to the Sun album, Standard Patter, which we talked about in the last episode, and he was on 2 tracks on that, one called Burnt to the Ground, the other called Last Orders. I think I said about those songs, the former sounded something like Mick Jagger singing Blur's Girls and Boys, and the latter kind of combined hopeful beats with cynical lyrics. And Lewca, he saw our review of Standard Patter on X and then sent us over this album, so it was nice enough to send that to us. Other than those 2 songs I'd heard, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I kind of thought it should, I had kind of high hopes it would be decent based on those tracks, and it is.
It is good.
It is good, yeah. It's really good. Like you say, Fire Up the Sun introduced the album, and they introduced Lewca essentially by calling the album Pish, basically, and telling him that he can't sing for shit. I like that there's the kind of skirl of the bagpipes in the background. It sounds like he's in a pub or a small music venue, and it's a bit like, it's almost like this antagonistic Scottish guy, like, taking the piss out of this English prick or whatever. That's what it feels like to me. And it builds up to that, like, the line of Lewca, no one gives a fuck, which is a nice callback to some of Fire Up the Sun's songs. So yeah, it's quite a varied album. Yeah, it's quite varied.
There's quite a few kind of guest artists on the album as well. It's funny that you mentioned Mick Jagger, or Lewca previously sounding a bit like Mick Jagger on the Fire Up the Sun, because we've got Mick Swagger on this.
That's right. Yeah, that is right. Yeah, Mick Swagger. What track's he on again? Oh yeah, he's on Day Job. Yeah, track 5, which is up there as one of the best songs on the album. It opens a bit like a film noir.
Yeah,
film.
That's how I've described it.
Like with this grizzled voiceover, it sounds a bit like Tom Waits, actually. That having mentioned him there, I like this grizzled music industry exec. I just like his voiceover. What does he say? He says, am I going to do the voice? He says, the music industry. Let me tell you something about the music industry. You got to sell dreams. You can't talk about your life. Nobody cares about your life. No one cares.
Something what it reminded me of, actually, just in speaking to yourself. Remember, I can't remember the name of the track, but it's on the Rap Ferreira album. And remember, there's a guy, it's just like, you don't know you're a poet. You just gotta be a poet, or something like that. It's kind of the same.
I do remember that now that you mention it, Yeah. So that's one of the best songs. It's got that voiceover, and it's basically a song about, I'm not going to quit a day job because you can't make any money in this industry. And it's got kind of jaunty piano in it. It's got... it reminds me a bit of the Far Side, actually, in some of the instrumentals, just kind of the beats and the sort of vocal choices here and there. And there's loads of good songs. The second track, Peace of Mind, it's got this kind of show tune piano intro, is the only way I could think of describing it. Like it's from an old TV show or something on Broadway, something like that. And then it brings in this kind of bizarre, like, bleepy bloopy electronic, which is quite funky. And I don't know if I actually liked it. the first time I listened to it. I was a bit like, I'm not sure about this, but it kind of burrows its way into a wee bit, and it's like a really interesting 8-bit kind of sounding solo at one point as well. The lyrics, which I haven't really written them down, but they tell a sort of Twilight Zone-esque tale about switching place with the devil.
No face.
Yeah, it's like, he sort of becomes the devil or something like that. And there's a line that goes, "If God is a chicken, I'm guessing dog must be the egg," which I quite liked.
You've kind of hit on a few points there. I can see where you're coming from. Like, I wasn't too sure if I would enjoy it upon kind of first listening. And you kind of mentioned in Peace of Mind there being a bit of like what sounded almost like an 8-bit game. One thing I will say about the album is there's a lot of depth. Like, there's a lot of textures and kind of layers. And you mentioned it like kind of sounding a wee bit like a kind of show tune. I've kind of written similar things about two of the songs on the album, Roundabout and All Grown Up, which I kind of felt it's Roundabout kind of opens with these kind of almost like cartoon-esque modulated vocals. It kind of the kind of lyrical content kind of deals with being nostalgic about the past, being a teenager, smoking joints in the roundabout, and then that then coming full circle towards the end of the song with him kind of thinking about his own children growing up and how they'll kind of go on to do that, and reminisce about or think about their lives and think about being free and what have you. But the song kind of features really, really kind of fat, bassy electronics. There's like sounds of kind of smashed glasses in there. The whole thing feels really kind of fuzzy and fudgy, almost like comic. Like, it reminded me of, I couldn't have put my finger on it for love nor money, but both Roundabout and All Grown Up felt like a kind of 90s children's TV theme tune. Like, I've written Dennis the Menace, but I don't think it's Dennis the Menace. But that's all I could think of. I had this kind of picture in my mind. And I suppose that must only be intentional, because it's, as I said, the lyrical content's dealing with the idea of nostalgia. And I imagine, Lewca's probably about the same age as us. So, if that's the type of thing that he's trying to evoke from, those songs, he's hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, certainly for Roundabout, I mentioned that it had a sort of nursery rhyme type rhythm, and it's got like a lazy beat that feels like it's being performed almost in slow motion in times, which kind of suits that hazy kind of, the whole thing about smoking weed in the middle of a roundabout kind of thing. It just the tempo and the instrumentation kind of suits that idea. And I mean, what did I say about All Grown Up? I said bit of a weird one. This. I think it uses a thing called a clavinet, which is the instrument that plays the riff at the start of Stevie Wonder's Superstition. That iconic bam 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 bam. I can't even.
Oh yeah.
It's got that weird. It's not quite a guitar, but it's still a stringed instrument. It sounds almost like a synth, but it still sounds like a stringed instrument. It's a weird one. I think that's a clavinet. I could be talking shite, but that's what it reminds me of. And it's just a song about, refusing to grow up. There's loads of different styles of instrumentation on it, including a squeaking baby's toy or a dog toy or something at one point. And again, I've said it feels really childlike in that sort of not being able to make your mind up kind of way. Although I have said it's not my favourite song, but it's decent. I think songs like Monday Morning, which is the next track, sounds like The Specials, sounds like, A Message to You, Rudy, but with a more thumping bass beat. I really like that song. Yeah, I quite like the ska kind of bits. The brass sounds a bit like Les and Jake in their kind of more relaxed moments as well. I really like a lot of songs on here. Quite Like Me. I'm kind of jumping about.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Quite
Like Me,
fantastic.
I think that's one of my favourites.
I would say
With
it's
Elephant
the best
Man.
song. Yeah, I'd say that's the best song on the album. This kind of mad reggae. I've said it's pure distilled joy, is how I've described it. Sort of uplifting electronics, soothing harmonies, chipper piano, throaty vocals, full-on reggae vocals, mixed with more traditional rapping. It's just, what a great song.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of one of the singles from the album as well, and you can kind of see why. Yeah, Elephant Man's rapping at about the kind of 2-minute mark was a huge high point for me. Like, I really liked it. I've written that the song has a kind of real swagger and swing to it. I think there's a lot of swagger to this album. I've kind of mentioned it in most of the tracks, to be honest. We've kind of missed out. I Got It All. Again, we're kind of saying we're kind of jumping about a bit, but I Got It All is brilliant, particularly like that kind of call and answer between the vocals and the instrumentation that you get in the kind of pre-chorus, and then the kind of larger, more brash and bold call and answer session in the main chorus where he's shouting, "I got it all!" Just works really well, and you can't help but kind of sing along to it. And I suppose in terms of lyrical content, again, it kind of deals with this kind of the materialistic nature of society and almost this kind of rejection of that. Like he's saying, like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like, why have designer clothes that you can't fit in or you can't move in?
Yeah.
There's this really cool bridge. It's quite short lived, but I quite liked it. It's about the kind of the 1 minute 40 mark. Get a kind of brief flourish of what sounds like a kind of electronic organ or synth, which for me kind of felt quite Ray Mancherezic-esque, kind of a bit of the Doors, which I quite liked. I really like that. Disco Boy. I quite like that as well, man. I like that as well. It features Feabraz. I don't know if I've pronounced his name correctly, but he's a French beatboxer and looper. Opens with kind of a piano, disco dancey-esque vibe to it. Quite interesting, you know what I mean? He's almost talking about, I suppose, again, kind of hails back to that idea of nostalgia and youth and how, maybe kind of grown up, thinking a certain way, but having to kind of change his kind of mindset. So I think it probably kind of touches on the idea of kind of identity and gender politics and stuff like that. And again, him moving with the times and being accepting of it. Yeah, it's good. I felt like Boombap for Boomers could have came straight from a Mighty Bush episode.
I've likened it to, well, I felt like it sounded like, the bass line at least sounded like it could have come straight out of like an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like the sort of music that would be playing maybe in the background, or that Will would be dancing to or something in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And it's got a really good chorus which goes, "Boombap for Boomers, wicked shit that'll stick in your brain like a tumour." And that's like, sounded exactly like Jurassic 5 to me. It's like one of those like great lines that you get in a Jurassic 5 song. So yeah, I really liked Boombap for Boomers as well. Disco Boy is a fun track. I like the lyrics of "Dance like you're fucking crazy, you're a disco boy. Music sucks, but you're amazing, you're a disco boy." And I like the fact that...
And the lyric... Sorry, man. The lyric where he's just like, "Bomb with a penis, still got a penis. Let's not let it get between us," or something like that.
Yeah, it's only a penis. Yeah, that's a good line.
It's only a penis.
I like the fact that he literally says, "This ain't a woke song." He's like, "This ain't a woke song.
Yeah.
A joke, mate.
Yeah.
I ain't woke." Like, I just like the way that he throws that in there. Yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff.
Do you know another good song? Again, probably another favourite of mine. Internet Recovery. Yeah. Like, it feels like an 80s, like a cheesy 80s banger, I feel like kind of bright synths, complete with that kind of old dial-up internet tone, making kind of several appearances. Chorus was phenomenal. Yeah, I love that.
The chorus again, is like Flight of the Conchords-esque for me.
Aye. Another thing, like, I don't know if you kind of picked up on it, so the track after that, Life in It, features John Meekie. Or John Meekie, I don't know how you pronounce it.
No, I didn't pick up.
Yeah. So I'm assuming it's as in the John Meekie Collective, and we kind of featured his 2021 album High Vibrations on the podcast previously. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and that's actually really quite a cool song as well. It's like sort of tribal kind of beat, and then it's reminding me a bit of sort of bands like Underworld or Faithless at times as well.
Again,
Without going like full on sort of dance music. But yeah, it's quite a cool song. And, and it ends with the song Daydreaming, which is like quite a folky acoustic song that slowly kind of morphs into this dreamy reggae, I suppose, which is really good into the album. Yeah, what have you given this?
I've given it an 8 out of 10. I kind of felt as if, what I've written here is totally accomplished what he set out to achieve in his kind of bio. I think there's a lot to say about this album. As we've kind of touched upon, there's a great deal of complexity and layers, texture, depth to each one of these tracks. And I think it definitely grows on you. And I think you definitely discover something new every time you listen to it, whether it is that kind of smash classes that you hear on the squeaky toy or whatever it may be. Deals with a lot of different topics as well. So like the idea of kind of nostalgia, parenthood with like kind of Monday morning, relationships with like a life in it or kind of failed relationships, everyday struggles in a really kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek and enjoyable way. It's just a really fun album, doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I've given it a 9 out of 10. It's just an exceptional album, and it's got all these little nods to funk and ska and reggae and rap and all kinds of electronic music from the 70s, 80s and the 90s and beyond. And I think the only thing that stops me from giving it full marks is that there's some odd choices here and there that kind of take me out of it a little, but like you say, it's just a really fun album. I really enjoyed it. And if you like those two tracks, well, I mean, if you liked the Fire at the Sun standard Patter album, you're almost guaranteed to like this, I would say. There are a lot of similarities in tone as well as sort of style of some of the music. Cool. Okay, so that was Boombap for Boomers by Lewca.
All I ever wanted was peace of mind. Sitting in the middle of a roundabout, smoking weed and wondering what life's about. Them designer threads that cost a fortune. Why buy clothes that you can't even move? How do you know that you made it? A couple fellas that rock whatever. We're not so clever, we put this shit out with lots of errors. Ooh, why do the work we do? You'll never find someone like me. It's Monday morning and I'm hungover again. Boombap for boomers, when your shit never stick in your brain like a tumor. Turn it up now. Dance like you're fucking crazy. You're a disco boy. Music sucks, but you're amazing. You're a disco boy. Starting internet recovery. Starting internet recovery. This may take a while. Love is funny, not that in it, mate. Word.
So, the next one is a little bit different. It is The Heartist by Galvo, and this is a self-released album the end of September last year. It's 14 tracks and 53 minutes, roughly, so close to an hour long. We were sent this by Galvo, a singer-songwriter from Dublin, Ireland, and he didn't give us much background in the email other than it's my debut and it's self-funded from working in factories. That's pretty much what he said in his email, but he did provide all sorts of links and info to take a look at. His website bio talks about channeling some dark energy from difficult periods in his life, like being homeless, living in his car, sort of channeling that into his music. This album's not available on Spotify or most of the other streaming services at the moment, but it is available on Bandcamp to buy, and the whole visual album is on YouTube for free. So all the music, vocals, guitars, banjo, buzuko, organ, bells, and some piano is performed by Galvo. I don't need to pretend I know what all those instruments are. And all of the drums and percussion are by a guy called Neil Woods. So just press and play on this. We get the first track, The Weight, and there's an immediate sense of grandeur, whether it's the plucked strings, the rousing piano, the layered vocals, or the dramatic landscapes of the accompanying visuals. The only way I can really describe the visuals is as a series of paintings of landscapes and cityscapes, or sometimes faces or characters. And it's almost like stop motion animation in a way, that there's a sort of stutter in the way the frames and the visuals kind of zoom in. It's almost like they're always traveling forward, and they kind of morph frame by frame. So sometimes the changes are subtle, like somebody's face sort of morphs a little bit, or a face can morph into a mask, or things like that. And then other times it's more dramatic, like just big changes, sudden pop-ins or pop-outs of things. And it's a really interesting art style. I can't pretend to understand if there's a sort of narrative thread going along with this. I think it would take an entire podcast in itself to try and unpack all of that. The vocals we get remind me a little bit of MGMT is what I want to say. Oh. And I think some of the instrumentals remind me of the Me Rex album that we covered, Mega Bear, as well.
Yeah, I'll give you that, because I felt that as well. Yeah, I think that's a pretty apt description. The first song, The Wait, I think was maybe originally released back in 2018, so I think it's going to, although this is his kind of debut album, I think, there's maybe been a few songs out there in the ether, and he's kind of pulled them all together in this album. And, you kind of mentioned kind of a lot of kind of different instruments there, and I felt, for my money, it was immediately kind of beautifully evocative, tender, melancholic. You mentioned that, this kind of idea of grandeur. Similarly, I kind of said that it feels like a kind of really kind of spacious kind of number. And I would say that's the case for all of the songs on this album, with maybe a few exceptions. I would say that immediately put me in mind of Empty Country's self-titled debut album that we kind of previously covered.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
See the likeness. There's kind of smacks of kind of Sega Ross, I would say, there.
Yes.
But Fleet Foxes.
Yeah.
Sufjan Stevens. Bit of Radiant Heart. Remember, we kind of previously covered, I think, maybe their debut album, Broken Spectre. I would also say that there's a bit of Silver Sun Pickups in amongst there as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. Yeah, it's a very atmospheric album, and there's that kind of that sort of runs through the entire album. So it's one of these ones that kind of just sort of washes over you. It's one of these ones you kind of absorb as a whole, rather than necessarily picking out individual tracks, I would say. I mean, you can do that, but The Wait is a really great intro to the album. Take, which is later in the album, that reminded me a lot of Sigur Rós, just in all the little subtle touches of instrumentation. I got a little bit of a Elton John's Tiny Dancer vibe from the track before that, maybe, which is a bit of a weird one, just something in the melody there. And there's a great line on that that says, maybe my heart's been beaten down a little too much. Maybe I've hit the ground and I don't like the concrete's touch. There's lots of nice little memorable lyrics like that across the album. At that point in the visuals, it's all very sort of, it depicts people in the foreground looking at colourful fireworks in the background. On some of the other songs, you've got black and white visuals that are zooming in on these crumbling skulls.
Yeah,
you've got these stunning vistas of crashing oceans with solitary figures like standing on the waves or standing on mountaintops. You've got people sitting on the roofs of crumbling cityscapes. There's just all sorts of cool visuals. I think the visuals and the music all works quite well together.
I would agree with you, though. It's hard. I mean, there has been quite a few. I think there's been 4 singles in total kind of released from the album. So The Wait, as we said, kind of been one of them. These Waves, Gracious, and Getting Better. But I'd be in agreement with yourself that it's an album that you kind of experience and it kind of washes over you, which I think could be quite divisive for some people. You know, I really enjoyed it though. You know, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's, while it's got that kind of atmospheric kind of sort of washes over you kind of vibe, I think there's enough going on throughout to keep you invested and keep you from getting bored. And when you combine that with the visuals as well, it's a very engrossing experience. There's lots of variety. There's some of the songs have got drilling drums and crooning guitars. There's twinkling pianos. There's lots of great vocal melodies. And there's a lot of kind of building up of layers and building up to sort of crescendos as well. And you get those moments where the visuals are the waves crashing, and that kind of ties up with the intensity of the instrumentals and the vocals at times as well. It's a really interesting album.
What did you rate it?
I've given it a 9 out of 10 again. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's an experience. You could certainly listen to this without the visuals, but I think they are a big part of it, and they're visually stunning. And you can just sit back and let the whole thing wash over you. And yes, there are bits that sound quite samey, but they kind of suit the whole kind of theme and tone of the album really well. So it never feels like a chore to listen to, or at least to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're correct. Like, I think that there's definitely enough in there to kind of keep you entertained and keep you listening. You know, there's a bit of country flavour to a few of the songs, but I mean, I kind of even got like a kind of surf vibe off one of the tracks as well. So like a name tag called Neve, I've kind of mentioned that there been a bit of a kind of surfer vibe to it, like kind of rollicking drum beat and kind of piano stabs and flourishes, which, you know, I really quite enjoyed. I was really quite impressed by the vocals as well, because you know, before I kind of did any of the kind of research, I just kind of listened to it from start to finish. And yeah, I was quite surprised to find out that there wasn't any kind of female vocalist on the albums. It was entirely himself. So that in itself, you know, it's just hugely ambitious and, you know, impressive.
Yeah, definitely. I did the same with the vocals at first. You know, first time listening to The Weight, I thought they were female vocals. So it was strange to find out that it was a male. Yeah, it's I suppose it's quite a difficult album to describe the sound of, but it is sort of, you know, you've mentioned a few bands. It's that sort of indie folk, a bit of country, and kind of a hard one to describe, I suppose.
But a good listen.
But yes, a good listen.
I would agree, man. Like I gave it like an 8 or 9. As well, very autumnal feel. I would say like that. That's
you made me want to mention Ton there just by the autumnal kind of. But I don't know if that's just because you said autumnal, and that's like the first band I go to when someone says, "What's an album you listen to in the autumn?"
I think it's fair to liken this to some of Tongue's songs.
Good. Well, a very unusual just presentation, I suppose. Given that it is a visual album, and I would definitely recommend that you go and watch it on YouTube. And then if you like it, go and buy it from Bandcamp. So yeah, that was the Heartist, a visual album from Galvo.
We split the skies. We just don't belong to this. These words are in my bed. Leave the light on. Maybe my heart's been beating down a little too much. This is it. This is always the way. This is it, and I hear you say, I can't believe in you. Could've turned the world out, could've made it spin around. Don't give it up, you know. No, I won't give it up. Don't wanna live with no regrets. I tried my very best again.
Okay, on to the penultimate album now, and this is Wide Willow from Kaspar Baum, not sure.
Baum.
And Wide Willow was released on the 1st of February this year. It's a self-released album. It's 8 tracks, 36 minutes roughly. And they are a Dutch alt-rock sort of post-punk band based in Utrecht. And we were sent the album by IDVI Agency, who are also based in the Netherlands. And this is the band's second full-length album. So Kaspar Baum formed during lockdown in 2020, and their debut album, Voorland, came out a year later to critical acclaim, according to their Spotify bio, at least. And I haven't listened to Voorland, but if it sounds anything like Wide Willow, I can see why it would have been well received, because this is another excellent album.
Aye, so good. So, as you mentioned, they're from Utrecht, Netherlands. I think they're kind of the self-described post-punk Beatles. They've described themselves as a kind of mashup of Wilco, Arcade Fire, War on Drugs, The Cure, Joy Division, Deuce, and The Smiths. And, you know, I'm kind of less familiar with some of those bands than I am with some of the others, but yeah, I mean, the opening track, Warrior, brilliant opening track.
Yeah.
Immediately get that kind of Cure, post-punk, new wave vibes. It was the vocals that immediately caught my attention. I think that's a kind of strong sweep throughout the course of the album. And he seems to so I think the lead vocalist is called Ernie Green. And it changes so much throughout the course of the album, but it just keeps you engaged. Certainly in Warrior, I was getting sort of like kind of tinges of kind of country folk in there. I felt that like his vocals were almost kind of reminiscent of like said Bob Dylan, Cash. Vocals aside, I kind of really enjoyed that kind of trebly bass, the kind of bridge outro from about the kind of 2-minute mark. I initially thought was quite naff, but it really kind of grew on me. I really enjoyed the grunt of that kind of fuzzed up guitar. And, you know, back to their influences, the song ends with these kind of Johnny Marr-esque guitar flourishes, which is, you know, a huge, huge high point. That's something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, the vocals, for me, sit somewhere between Nick Cave and Michael Stipe from R.E.M. It's the only way I could think of describing them. And they suit this type of music so well. Like you said, that really trebly bass that leads in the song, and those kind of clanging, echoing guitar lines that reminiscent of stuff like The Cure. And the vocal line of "I feel lost in a beautiful world" is like that's repeated throughout the song, and it's so good. And it's interesting about, you mentioned that you kind of thought maybe it was a bit naff at first, and I think I kind of got that. I think I got that as well occasionally, like maybe on the Weather after, because I think for me, the introduction of Warrior was so good, and then the Weather is a little bit different, and maybe on first listen I thought, oh, this is a bit naff, but actually it's not at all.
It was just on that bridge in Warrior, because I think like the lead vocalist he kind of sings like mama mama mama, and I just thought,
oh yeah, okay, I'm with you.
that was only bit, but guitar kind of ramps up a gear and it actually works out pretty well. Weather, for my money, I loved it. One of my favourite songs on the album. I think it's outstanding. It opens with these kind of modulated vocals and electronic drum beat, and this really infectious, driving, stabbing guitar riff that's a real earworm. I've just been walking about, just singing it to myself, and the song jostles together with a kind of really slick bass line and ends with this kind of snarling guitar riff that it's a phenomenal track.
I don't know if you got this, but the vocals sound like a little bit Irish, like an almost Irish lilt to them. Like I kept thinking this is like an Irish protest song or something. And I mean, it is a protest song. It's written after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but there was just a weird something about those vocals that reminded me of, I don't know, Irish folk or something. It was quite weird given they're from Utrecht, but I really liked that. And yeah, some great lyrics as well. I can never get used to violence. I can never get used to blood. And if only we can change the weather. There's quite a cool video as well, which is just black and white stock footage of uniformed soldiers who are doing like Cossack dancing, I think. And then it's cut with live footage of the band performing the song.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's quite cool. War, the next track, is like freewheeling 70s rock. And then it goes a bit punk, and then it goes a bit grunge. And the vocals are like a dramatic narration.
Yeah, you know, again, kind of back to the vocals, it reminded me of Johnny Cash, in particular, that kind of the American recording, like his Rick Rubin era. Like, I could imagine him releasing something like this. I think you're right. I think, you know, it goes through, the song itself goes through kind of a number of different kind of phases. I've kind of mentioned that it kind of rumbles along with some kind of quite cool bass arpeggios, which are closely layered and mirrored with the guitar riff. I thought there was some really kind of hooky, almost kind of like neat kind of math rock moments too that I kind of really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's a cool song. You've got Winter as well, which is like a quite a laid back sort of alternative rock song. It's got fairly mellow instrumentation. It's quite uplifting, but there's a sort of somber undertow to the lyrics, which are talking about winter being on its way. And I think some of the vocals are a little bit shaky at first for me, even there, but because it's such an absorbing song, it doesn't really matter. I kind of got over that. And, you know, the vocals in a lot of alternative rock songs are quite shaky sometimes. And, you know, it doesn't matter. Who cares?
It is a brilliant song, and I would agree. You know, I've kind of written that it's more spacious, ethereal, and kind of floaty than the previous offerings. Again, back to the vocals, like I mentioned, it sounding a wee bit like Guided by Voices, the kind of singer from that band. And it also kind of likened it to the Saw Doctors as well. Like I said, it was like almost a mashup of those two vocalists. And I never actually thought about this when you mentioned it earlier, but Saw Doctors are an Irish band.
Oh.
So there must have been something kind of working its way in my mind when I was kind of listening to this. You mentioned, I think, some of the kind of vocal or lyrical refrains in, I think, Warrior. I felt like the kind of that vocal refrain of Winter is always on its way as part of the pre-chorus really effective. And I think, like, you know, they've got a real flair for that. And I think, you know, there's elements of that peppered throughout the album, and it works really well. And again, I kind of picked up on sort of a few kind of tinges of kind of country and folk in this song as well. And I love the kind of brush and snare percussion at the end of the kind of track, coupled with the kind of spectral guitars. I kind of felt as if that was a kind of really kind of tender and evocative moment. And I suppose without giving too much away, Winter gets a wee bit of a kind of reprise at the very end of the album.
That's right.
On the last track as well, which I quite liked.
Yeah. There's quite a few rocking songs on this. But there's quite a few sort of laid back, moodier songs as well. The Wheel is one. It's a bit of a moody, slow build, very atmospheric. Tempo never really breaks a sweat, but it's a really powerful song. Regardless, the track after that, Wagon's pretty moody as well. A bit quicker in the tempo through the verses. That's probably my least favourite song. I think it's a bridge I'm not really that into, but I really like the intro. Really cool, scuzzy guitars.
I kind of get that in the kind of latter part of the song, but for my money, it kind of opens with, and I know this is going to sound a bit naff, but you've already kind of mentioned it. I think it's a kind of undeniable part of the album. There is a definite kind of like 70s classic rock feel to some of this album. And like, I think Wagon almost opens with this kind of Mark Knopfler, you know, type guitar riff, you know, so you think of Sultans to Swing, think of the Dire Straits, you know, that's the kind of the feel that I got to. I felt as if the vocals, again, I know I keep coming back to that, but I felt as if they had kind of real gravitas to it. And again, I felt as if there was almost like, again, back to that kind of classic rock vibe, there was a bit of kind of Bruce Springsteen in there as well. Waltz was probably, so the kind of next track, Waltz is probably my least favourite track on the album. But I would say, for my money, this is the track that reminds me most like a kind of Nick Cave or Tom Waits. So
Yes, I mentioned that Nick Cave again for that one. It's just the boom of the singer's voice, I think, when he's, especially in the closing repetitions of the line Waltz with Me, just the way he delivers that. It's very Nick Cave-esque. I really enjoyed Waltz, actually. It reminded me a bit of Pearl Jam. I think there's maybe a little bit of Eddie Vedder in some of the vocals, and a little bit of Pillow Queens, actually, in some of the instrumentation. There's that sort of grungy, alt-rock kind of tinge to it. So yeah, I really like Waltz, actually. And then you've got the final track, Water, which you've mentioned. There's a bit of a reprise to the song Winter, but actually, it really works well as an album closer because it just brings together some of the best elements from throughout the album. But it adds a little bit of like weird kind of super furry animals-esque effects to it. So it's got that eccentricity to it, but it also sounds a bit like Joy Division and the Smiths, and a little bit like REM as well. It's pretty long, but it's another one of these situations.
8 minutes long, isn't it?
Yeah. It's 8.5 minutes long, something like that, and which can be risky. That can get boring, but I think the band, like I mentioned on with the band Dragged Up and the band Amateur Cult, when I was talking about that gig, they just lock into a groove and then they just go with it, so it doesn't really get boring. Yeah, I find that to be a really excellent way to end the album.
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant album. I've kind of written here that I know it's a bit of a naff thing to say, but it does feel as if there's kind of something for everybody. They're kind of touted as a kind of, obviously tout themselves as a kind of new wave post-punk outfit, but I think said, and in the conversation we've had, that they draw on a number of different genres. I've kind of mentioned it already. I think the lyricist has a kind of real flair for using kind of hooky lyrics as a device to kind of hold the songs together and kind of drive them forward, which I find really effective. The instrumentation's top drawer stuff. I do think that some songs stand out a bit better than others. I would say that maybe the album is kind of slightly top heavy, in that I would say probably my favourite tracks are probably towards the kind of top end, but I gave it a strong 9.
Yeah, I've given that a 9 as well. I totally get what you mean with maybe it being front loaded, but I think it's that it can kind of come storming out of the gates, and then there are a couple of sort of more laid back songs after that initial kind of punch, which maybe takes the wind out of its sails a little bit, I guess. But that didn't really bother me, to be fair. So yeah, I've given it a 9 out of 10 as well. It's just a really great collection of powerful rock songs.
What, just because I never found anything on it, but what is the significance of all the song titles starting with W? Is it World War III? Is that the thinking?
Oh,
why would it be World War III? I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, the album's Wide Willow, which is all W's, and then the tracks are all W's as well. I don't know. Is that just a weird quirk, or is it, they've just been like, oh, let's make all the song names have W's, or is there something more to it than that? I've no idea. But regardless, it's a pretty cool album. Okay, so that was Wide Willow by Kaspar Baum.
I feel lost in a beautiful world. I can never get used to violence. How to defend possession and how to kill for more. Teach you to die for nothing. Teach you to fight a war. Winter is always on its way. Just sing me a song. I believe in you. Walls with me on the edge of liberty.
Okay, last album then. Something a
Do you want me
different.
to jump in it?
Yeah, you go for it.
So it's Take It or Leave It by CHERYM. So this was released on the 10th of February. this year on Alcopop Records. There's 10 songs and it's just over 30 minutes long, so it's not a particularly long album. It's the band's long-awaited debut album, which they're currently promoting at the moment. They've had a tour of the UK and Ireland, recently played the Hug and Pint in Glasgow on the 21st of February. Quite gutted that I didn't know about that in hindsight. The band themselves are a three-piece pop-punk band who hail from Derry in Ireland. Influences include the likes of Charlie Bliss, Bikini Kill, Slotface, Pup and the Pixies. In an interview that they did with Music News Web, which I found online, they described how their music encompasses all sorts of genres, from country to heavy metal. They described their sound as being like fizzy pop rocks, and you can immediately hear that kind of pop-punk influence in the opening track, which is a banger straight off the mark. Alpha, Beta, Sigma. It reminds me of kind of old school Tsunami Bomb, stuff from kind of Hellcat Records. In that same interview from Music News Webs, they kind of discussed how their first EP, Hey Tory, felt very much like an introduction to them and their sound, whereas their debut album is very much introduces their listeners to them as people and their experiences, and it's far more politically charged. Hey Tory is a fantastic EP. It was released in October 2021, and I kind of get where they're coming from. Having kind of listened to them both, there's some really good tracks on that EP. Listen to My Head is a standout track. There's just something about the inflection that the lead vocalist puts on the lyrics in the chorus that I find really infectious. Gone Girl is a really interesting track as well, and that's kind of definitely worth listening to. But Alpha Beta Sigma, as I said, the kind of first track in this album opens with a kind of really punchy, energetic guitar riff and a driving drum beat. The song itself kind of deals with this idea of toxic masculinity, the kind of Sigma incel male mindset, and kind of draws attention to notorious internet celebrities like Andrew Tate, with the lyrics saying that the internet is your church and Tate is your savior. There's some really good kind of gang vocals on the chorus, which I felt was a huge high point. It's just dead infectious and something that you'll be singing for days, if not kind of weeks on end.
Yeah, it feels like an assassination of like incels and toxic.
That's a brilliant way.
Like the way that it's delivered. It's got this rolling bass, it's got this buzzing static, and it bursts into these catchy bouncing riffs and angry but melodic feminine vocals, and it sounds like classic noughties pop punk in the instrumentation and the melodies.
Absolutely.
But it's got this kind of lyrical subject matter that's bad up to date. I
just listened to a podcast this morning, actually. It was Richard Herring of, what's it called again? Richard Not Judy. Remember they used to do
This Morning with Richard Not Judy, yeah.
That's it. This Morning Richard Not Judy. And he had Sarah Pascoe on, and she is, they're doing a book review, and I think she just released a novel called Weirdo, and where they kind of deal with stuff like this. And they were kind of talking about how, there's people out there who we may know them, who kind of hold some of the same views that kind of Andrew Tate have, and they can be fairly passable human beings. You know what I mean? Like they don't come across as nutters straight off the mark. But if you kind of wait about long enough and kind of scratch under the surface a wee bit, they'll come out with some pretty interesting things. Like I remember me and Kerry were watching that. I can't remember if it was a documentary on Andrew Tate or if he was featured on something, and he's just kind of sitting, and he's sitting ludicrous, you know what I mean? He's got like this big stogie, and he takes a big draw from the stogie, and he's like, women are barely sentient, and you're like, the fuck's your game?
Yeah,
like,
I've seen that scene,
and it's not, I don't think it's done in a tongue-in-cheek way, you know what I mean? It's, it's not like Women Know Your Limits, Harry Enfield and Chums rubbish, you know what I mean? It's, the guy's bonkers, but there's, I don't understand it. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent.
No, but I mean, it's right to talk about it. It's the sort of thing that's covered in the lyrics here. So,
aye.
I mean, CHERYM they are essentially pop punk in the vein of the sort of classic 90s and 90s bands that we grew up with. Like, stuff like Sum 41 or Newfound Glory or Lit or Bowling for Soup, like those kind of bands. But I think it's not just kind of sugary adolescent rubbish. I think the fact it's got that modern outlook to the lyrics, and there's plenty of kind of harder, punkier elements in the instrumentation too that make this worthwhile. And I think there's elements of the Lindas in there that we've covered, and
Definitely.
and Olivia Rodrigo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love Taking Up Sports. It's the third track.
It's a great track.
And I think it was earlier in the week. I was walking to work in the morning. I was like, I want to put on a song to kind of lift my spirits on the way to work. So I put on Taking Up Sports, and absolutely love it. It reminds me of, I've just mentioned the Lindas. Partly reminds me of them. It reminds me of the song Jessie's Girl by Rick Springfield, or indeed Jessie's Girl 2 by Coheed and Cambria, featuring Rick Springfield. It's just superb. It's unbelievably catchy, super melodic. It's a thumping punk rock song. I love the story and the lyrics as well. It's essentially a girl who's a crush on this girl on the football team. You know, it's humorous. The chorus, which goes, "Baby, when I see you in those shorts, you have got my head doing all sorts." It's just brilliant songwriting.
Even the inclusion of that, you know, old kind of football chant, "Ole, ole, ole." It's like,
Exactly,
that's fucking ace. Like, that's fucking ace. It's interesting you mentioned Lindas, because that's exactly what I had down for this track as well. The vocals on this album are like top drawer stuff. Like, the vocal harmonies in particular are just brilliant. Like, they're just executed really, really well. And as you said, I would completely agree with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's very reminiscent of, you know, the kind of pop punk that we grew up with, to the point where even like they obviously kind of, it's almost like they use kind of devices and tropes that we're kind of familiar with. Like for example, that kind of the thing about them, which is the kind of second track in the album, like that ends like those vocal harmonies that song ends on immediately put me in mind of like a kind of Blink-182 track. But as you said, it's not just, you know, sugar syrupy pop punk rubbish. You know what I mean? Like, they're dealing with proper and important kind of issues. And I would say, like, the thing about them, I kind of felt as if it was a kind of brilliant track. It kind of opens with this kind of rumbling bass, accompanied by a kind of spectral, ethereal guitar riff that almost, for my money, sounded as if it was like a kind of, it's almost like a taunting kind of playground taunt. Like it felt, I don't know how to describe it. It felt like the equivalent of doing this. Like, and I think that's possibly deliberate given the subject matter, because it's about it kind of identifying as being kind of non-binary and people being largely ignorant or willingly belligerent of that fact. And this kind of this song kind of feels very much like a kind of declaration of intent with the lyric, "I don't want to wait for you to calculate, I'm non-binary." It's like, I'm fucking telling you, you know what I mean? I'm not waiting about for you to, you know, get it into your head. And that bridge, how many times do I have to say it before you get it? It's them, which kind of ramps up intensity as it goes on. It's a kind of really useful device and kind of driving that message home. Again, I mentioned kind of vocal harmonies are kind of lush and absolutely brilliant. And again, back to what I was saying about that ending being, you know, just that ending in particular just feels like peak early 90s, noughties kind of punk rock.
It's a bit of heavy metal on that song as well, I would say. Just a little bit of heavy metal in the sort of way that Sum 41 used to infuse metal into their pop punk. Like, and a bit of grunge, like that chorus, you know, "I don't want to wait for you to calculate, I'm non-binary." It's got that almost discordant kind of grunge element to the melodies. And it's got a great shrieking kind of guitar solo in there as well, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Another kind of high point for me in the album was Binary Star, which for my money kind of felt like a love song. It kind of opens like an acoustic track. I felt as if it was kind of beautifully tender and evocative, especially with that kind of bridge around the kind of 2-minute mark, which I've described as being a huge kind of high point in the track. I think it's brilliantly executed. It's kind of prefaced by the introduction of some kind of distant strings there in the background before the rest of the band coming in, and it genuinely leaves you with kind of shivers down your spine. Like that's a beautiful song. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the vocal performance, like while that's not my favourite song, the vocal performance on it is pretty astonishing, like it is on most of these tracks.
What other songs kind of stood out for you instead?
I really like If I Was a Man. It's this anthemic protest song which lays bare the struggle for equality that women are still facing today, along with other sort of, gender minorities or non-binary people. And it's just a banger. Like, it's an absolute banger. It's got these rugged riffs, stomping drums, a rousing chorus that goes, they wonder why we're bringing all the noise. It's because we're always taught that boys will be boys, and they can start to feel more overjoyed if I was a man, if I was a man. And it's that age-old shout to be heard and to be allowed to have the same experiences and to grow up being able to do what we want to do rather than be told you have to live a certain way because you have been assigned a certain gender. So another great song. Interestingly, the last song reminds me of Dashboard Confessional, which is a band I haven't thought about for a long time. And their song in particular, Hands Down, which was a favourite of mine back in the day. They don't sound like, don't get me wrong, these songs don't sound the same, but there are just these kind of certain musical and melodic cues that strike me as being similar. But then it's got a bit of a Bryan Adams Summer of '69 twist to the melody as well, which I thought was really interesting.
Aye, I mean, it's funny because so it's not me, it's you. Kind of feels, it kind of opens with this kind of Blink-182-esque. It felt kind of Blink-182-esque for me with the kind of opening guitar. But I kind of got some Spanish love song vibes as well.
Yeah,
Again,
I mean,
couldn't quite put my finger on it, but as you said, there was certain cues that just kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I didn't actually think about Spanish love songs, but now that you mention it, there's definitely
they kind of execute that kind of loud, quiet, loud dynamic between the kind of chorus quite well. That I'm always a kind of huge fan of, and kind of felt that the kind of bridge at the kind of 2-minute mark is a kind of real kind of foot stomper. I didn't get the kind of. Did you say Bryan Adams?
I did say Bryan Adams.
I didn't get that, but I'm not saying it's not in there.
There's definitely a sort of Summer of '69 melody in there, 100%. And it's that bit in the opening that you're mentioning, Blink-182, that guitar. That's the bit that reminds me of Hands Down by Dashboard Confessional,
right,
specifically.
Okay.
But really enjoyable album. There's maybe the odd sort of, I was going to say low point, but I don't think it's as fair to say a low point. It's just bits that I don't like quite as much as some, because the highs are so high. There are elements that I don't like quite as much, but still a really solid album. And interestingly, I was going to mention this earlier, was that in their Spotify bio, they, let me just find the quote. They say they are a 3-piece band of muckers from Derry with some seriously infectious songwriting credentials. And that last bit, the seriously infectious songwriting credentials, I mean, after listening to this album, you cannot argue with that one bit. I wondered if that was a bit like self-aggrandizing when I first read that bit, but no, you can't argue with it.
Yeah, you're quite right. You're quite right. I thought it was a brilliant album. I keep going back to the vocal melodies, but they're brilliant. It's an album with a strong message. I think it delivers that message really well, but it delivers it without being overly kind of strident or in your face. And I think, as well as much as that it is important, I think you can enjoy the album just as a kind of straightforward kind of punk and alt album as well. I think it's a belter of a kind of debut album. And I'm kind of teetering on a 9 or a 10, my man. Oh,
which way will you fall?
Oh, I don't know.
You've got to decide. You've got to decide. I give it a 9. I've given every album a 9, but I think I'd give this a 9 as well. So there's an odd bit that I'm not quite so that I don't love quite as much, so that it's not quite a 10 out of 10 for me.
Okay,
But it is excellent.
Well, it is an excellent album, isn't it? I'm gutted. I'm gutted that I never realised about them. I never knew about them playing the Hug and Pint, because
Yeah,
a
that's a good
phenomenal
gig.
venue to see them. If they come round again, definitely have to make more of an effort to go and see them. Somewhere like the old Hairdressers or Stereo, something like that would just be lovely.
I think
Upstairs at the old Hairdressers, but there's no stage.
it was all just the old on the floor.
Persian carpet.
Yeah.
Somewhere like that would be great.
Yeah, I think
Persian rug.
taking out sports would be amazing live. As with many of the songs from this album. Right, so that was, what was that? It was Take It or Leave It by CHERYM. I forgot the name of the album there.
The internet's our church, and Tate is our savior. I'm opening my eyes to fucking incel behavior. I don't wanna wait for you to calculate on my body rate. Does she even notice that I'm hovering? Baby, when I see you in those shorts, you have got my head doing it all sorts. Maybe I'm colorblind. I'm going out of my mind. They wonder why we're bringing all the noise. It's 'cause we're always told that boys will be boys. Don't tell me what I already know. Hey, do it another day. Yeah, all my bills will be late. So don't say you'll stay. You already walked away.
Okay, right, that's this one. That's us done.
That's a steam, man.
There you go. That's
That was
episode
a
27.
longing, Sneds. That was a
Oh.
longing.
Yeah, it was quite a long one. I was talking about Keanu Reeves for fucking no reason. Half an hour.
I did speak about Blackpool for probably about 40 minutes.
Before we even started, yeah, you did.
That was true. That was before we even started.
I'll keep some of that in.
Poor Kerry. Poor Kerry's. I expect the bedroom to be awash with kind of papers. Kerry's currently listening to the new Taylor Swift album. What's it called again? Oh, can't even remember. She's probably pouring it over it. It's like it's not the Dead Poets Society, but it's something kind of similar.
I don't know what it's called.
And she's a hardened Taylor Swift fan, and there's loads of kind of fan theories about the tortured poets. The tortured poets department.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it's called. So she's probably kind of frantically writing, loads about the lyrics and what have you to suss out the story.
Well, we'll be covering that on the next episode. No, we won't. We won't actually. Right. That's episode 27 of the Scratchcast done. Please send us your thoughts on the music we've covered. And if you do like any of the bands or artists we've talked about, let us know and make sure you send them some love too. If you want to support the show, you can subscribe to the Scratchcast wherever you get your podcasts or watch our ugly Scottish mugs on YouTube. Wherever you find us, please leave a nice review, a wee share. It all helps spread the good word. If you feel like it, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. The link is in the episode description. If you'd like your music to be featured on the podcast, then send your submissions to theheadscratcher@outlook.com or message us directly on Facebook and Instagram at the Head Scratcher or on Twitter at ScratcherHead. Don't forget, you can also head over to theheadscratcher.com and find reviews, recommendations, playlists, and reviews, and of course all the previous episodes of the podcast. The alternative music playlist number 44, featuring music from January to April 2024, is out now, and it's fit to burst with incredible new music like Scorpion by The Jig Show, It Was Then That I by Theo, Landfill Culture by Gyro Babies, Rock Nation Brunch by Marv Wan, Missing Person by Dragged Up, and Nocturnal Passenger by Under a Crumbling Moon. As always, there are hours and hours and hours of other cool shit in there too, so make sure you check it out. Finally, if you made it this far, all that's left to say is thanks for listening, and as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. See ya!
Bye! Bam, motherfucker.
It's not finished. It's finished.